Hi there, David McLeod here, your life mastery coach, author of the book, A Life to Die For, with another empowering episode of Life Mastery Soul Memos, my monthly series aimed at helping you to expand and magnify your life, one simple idea at a time. This is episode 9 for May 2021. The title for today's topic is Proactive Projection. I remember when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my mom was becoming exasperated with me, as she often did, because of the nature of the person I was. And she blurted out a harsh command that I remember as, "For God's sake, just stop being so full of yourself." Well, not really thinking too much about what she meant, I was more concerned about her anger and frustration. And because I loved my mom, as most kids do, and I wanted to make her happy, I figured there was something about me that needed to change. So, using the immature logic of a child, I decided that I would simply stop showing up that way. I didn't like the feeling of humiliation, so I unconsciously chose to do my best to hide this aspect of myself, this part that was too much for other people to handle, and I adopted what I mistakenly believed to be a humble attitude. Years later, I learned to call that now forgotten characteristic arrogance. And I noticed how other people in my life seemed quite arrogant at times. In effect, I started to see the disowned aspect of myself revealing itself in the behaviors and attributes of other people. And I even have developed a catalog in my mind of certain facial expressions, voice inflections, mannerisms, and language that were enough to trigger the judgment of arrogance within me. What I have just described here, experiencing in others the kinds of things that I had hidden or repressed within myself, is known in psychology as projection. Psychology generally sees projection as a kind of defense mechanism. In order to avoid the pain of acknowledging a bad thing within ourselves, we deny or repress it within ourselves and then unconsciously witness it in other people. But in my view, projection is not necessarily a negative or undesirable phenomenon. In fact, I see projection as a very valuable personal growth tool, which is why I've chosen to talk about it here. In my view, there are actually 3 forms of projection. First, shared experience. Consider any experience that you've ever had in your life, from the typical or mundane, driving a car, cooking on the barbecue, eating a piece of apple pie, to the more exotic, climbing a mountain, bungee jumping, singing your first solo in front of 500 people. If at any time after you have had this experience, you happen to witness someone else engaged in one of these things, you immediately begin to relate to what you are seeing back to your own earlier experience. As the other person does whatever he or she is doing, you connect to the sensations, thoughts, and emotions that you were experiencing when you were doing the same thing. In other words, you project your own internal experience from the past onto that other person today. Second, empathy. If you witness someone involved in an experience that doesn't necessarily correlate closely with one of your own experiences, then you may find yourself empathizing, especially if the experience involves any kind of pain or suffering. As you watch what is going on for the other person, you tend to have thoughts, emotions, and sensations of your own. And because that person's experience is foreign to you, you have to imagine or interpret what is going on for him or her based on the most similar experiences you can recall from your own life. In this case, you are actually projecting your interpretation and imagination onto the other person. Third, judgment and shadow. This last form of projection, and probably the most insidious, is the one that psychology seems to focus most attention on, where you find yourself judging someone else because of a perceived characteristic, aspect, or behavior that you have disowned or rejected within yourself. I gave the example a moment ago about trying hard to hide arrogance, and then seeing it showing up in others, and then judging it or even condemning it in the other person. But judgment and shadow are not always associated with bad or negative things. For example, consider someone you know who seems to be very comfortable owning his or her gifts and sharing them with the world. While you might consider this at first to be arrogant or not humble enough, there may be a part of you that wishes you could show up with as much confidence and self-love. You may in fact feel quite inspired by the other person, and you may secretly look for ways to bring yourself more fully into the world, while of course still keeping that arrogant part under control. So in a sense, everything is projection. Think about it. Everything that happens around us in the real world is communicated to us through our 5 physical senses and through our emotions. When something stimulates an emotion or one of our senses, this triggers a whole chain of events that results in some kind of realization within our brain. We interpret the incoming data, and then we make judgments and decisions based on that interpretation. All of this processing occurs 100% internally, at such a rapid rate that we aren't even aware that it is happening. Now, science has clearly demonstrated that the brain cannot tell the difference between a real experience and an imagined one. In fact, both kinds of experiences can produce the exact same behavior in the brain. But interestingly, when we speak of our experiences in real life, whether the experiences themselves are real or imagined, we attribute behaviors and actions to objects and people that exist outside of ourselves. This is not to suggest that those objects or people don't really exist outside of ourselves. Of course, they probably do. But if they were indeed only in our imagination, how would we tell the difference? So this is what I mean when I say that everything is projection. Now, this all may seem to be a little bit esoteric, and you might well wonder why I'm even talking about it. Well, the answer is simple. The main value in projections is that they often reflect the very aspects of ourselves that we don't want others to see. For this reason, they are a powerful source of information about ourselves, and they give us an opportunity to really get to know ourselves more deeply. However, because of the incredible energy we put into hiding those aspects of ourselves in the first place, we tend to have a very strong resistance to accepting that everything we criticize in others has an equivalence within ourselves. Thus, we make it difficult for ourselves to begin the process of owning our projections. When you first start to integrate this awareness, you may find it painful to acknowledge that everything you hate, everything you loathe and can't stand, everything you have ever judged negatively is at some level, in some way, a part of your own totality. When you realize that the process of projection is itself an unconscious defense against seeing yourself clearly, you can appreciate how difficult it is to recognize your projections and claim as your own the qualities or traits in others that triggered your reaction. However, if you are truly interested in growing at the deepest level of your soul, then you must be willing to accept and love all parts of yourself, without exception. So my invitation for you today is to begin raising your awareness about all your projections. Accept them. Welcome them in. Let your projections lead you onto a path of recognizing every aspect, attribute, characteristic, or behavior that you find so hard to accept in others whether you judge it as good or bad. Remember, you are an amazing and magnificent divine being of light and love. So allow yourself to really see the entire truth and wonder of who you are. If you are new to the Wellness Universe, thank you for being here. Woo is a really, truly marvelous place to be for pretty much anything that's related to personal growth or just feeling good about yourself. You can find all kinds of world changers, coaches, authors, speakers, poets, musicians, healers of every kind to help you on your journey. Please check out the website at thewellnessuniverse.com. That's thewellnessuniverse.com. And when you get there, please remember to look me up. You can find me. I'm in the World Changers page there. Just search for my name, David McLeod, and you'll find me. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Remember, let your projections guide you to ever deeper awareness and acceptance of all of your amazing and boundless qualities and characteristics. I'll see you next time right here on Life Mastery Soul Memos. Bye-bye for now.